Continuing. Hello again. So today is the fourth session of our class, of our course on, I always forget the title of the class because I'm not so satisfied with it. I think it's a Freudian reason. So the title is
Thinking Our Present 2.
And the subtitle?
Oh, that was more philosophical. I'll let you say that one.
The Task of Modernity. And I think we haven't addressed the word task yet. And we might come on back to that term again at the end of the class today. The task of modernity. Okay, so today I think we are going to do something kind of dry, which is we are going to read a text together, but a very good text, which is an excerpt from the introduction of the book by Hartmut Rosa that we have already discussed, Resonance. I can show it to you again.
Please.
I have the French version here, and I know there is an expensive English version. I don't know if there is a cheap English version. I haven't found it yet. And I have found online an excerpt of the introduction that I thought was very good to work on. I know last time I said that was the end of the segment on resonance, but I thought at the same time we didn't really went deep enough in the understanding of what the concept of resonance is according to this author. And that's what we're going to do today, if that's okay with you. I'm going to share my screen again. And I do that by partager l'écran, écran partagé. Okay, and I'm here now with this text that Google Translate has translated, and then I edited it. So it's not perfect, but it's better than the first version by a robot or an algorithm, actually. And so if you notice mistakes, please let us know. And I'm suggesting this question to start with, and that will be actually the exercise today. We're going to highlight with bright colors, maybe just one color, components that elaborate the concept of resonance according to Rosa. So each time you see something that looks or sounds like a component of the concept, please beep or say something, and we will highlight this term, this component. I start the reading, and as I go, I will get tired of myself and I will let someone else read. When my grandmother was asked on her deathbed what she would change of her life if given the chance to live it a second time, she replied, not much. However, she would not have been so scared anymore. This is a reflection that can be generalized, surprisingly. Many are, in fact, who, in retrospect, would have liked to have had a life with less worries, less work, and during which they would have more devoted to their friends. I don't know if that's syntactically correct. They would have devoted more to their friends.
Have been, maybe, but
yeah, being more devoted to their friends. Good point. But being afraid is one way to relate to the world. It is a mode of registration in the world. In order to better understand the alternatives to which we are confronted, imagine two women, Anna and Hannah. Do I pronounce those names right?
Very well.
yeah.
In 3 short sequences, at 3 points any day of the week. 7 a.m. Anna is seated at the breakfast table. Her husband is sitting next to her. As their teenager son comes to join them, then their already almost adult daughter. Children give Anna a big smile, to which she responds with a bright smile. My God, they are dear to me, she thinks. Those moments of the morning that we share before the start of the day are, for me, what matters most in the world.
That feels like a resonance thing.
Good, wonderful. 8:30 a.m. On the way to work, the sun is shining. Anna tastes the warmth of its rays. She looks forward to the tasks that await her and can't wait to meet up with her colleagues. 6 p.m. at the gym. Anna is happy to finally be able to stir a little. She plays volleyball with her leisure group. She likes this amazing sport, and it does not matter if she wins or if she loses.
A bit of resonance.
Yeah, so those two examples, those two ladies, they are what we have already called what? Conceptual characters, according to the Deleuze and Guattari's book, named What is Philosophy? That we studied a little bit last term. Conceptual characters that help us understand. That's actually a very basic way to understand what conceptual characters are. Here there are examples of resonance, and we are going to see lack of resonance. So can somebody else maybe follow the reading with the example of Hannah? For Hannah?
I'll read it. For Hannah, it is quite different. Hannah is seated at the breakfast table, 7 a.m. Her husband is sitting next to her as their teenage son comes to join them. Then their already almost adult daughter. Their bad mood breaks your eyes. We look at each other with sorrowful looks. When we look at each other, my God, how I hate that. What am I doing with these people? What binds me to them apart from the worries they give me? 8:30 a.m. On the way to work, the sun is shining. Hannah fears the sunburn. The thought of the work ahead makes her sick. I'm tired of having to put up with the endless scowls of my colleagues and to hear them endlessly telling the same stories. 6 p.m. at the gym. Hannah wonders what she's doing here. Certainly she needs activity, but why to die again? After a day's work, she plays badly at volleyball and her partners annoy her. So in the end, she is only happy when it all stops. Shall I stop or do I continue?
Yeah, let's have someone else read so it makes a different voice with the interpretation.
I'll go. No daring interpretation is needed here to judge, well, that there is no factual element to distinguish one from the other. Anna had a good day and Hannah had a terrible day. However, if it turns out that these differences fit into a regular pattern, then don't we have a good reason to say that Anna leads a happy life and Hannah an unpleasant life, even though these two lives are similar? So, don't count on me to moralize cheaply in this style.
A short pause, Gilly, so that I can remind you of our task today with this text is to highlight the components, the conceptual components of the concept of resonance. So from now might appear in the text some of those components, and if you find that one word or a few words are, let us know. Don't hesitate to interrupt the reader. Thank you, Julie. You can continue. Sorry, I interrupted.
Don't count on me to moralize cheaply in this style. Everyone can be happy with what they have. My intention is neither to lecture easily nor to write a textbook of good manners. But as a sociologist, I can ask myself what, in social conditions, makes Anna lead a happy life and Hannah an unhappy life. Because in putting the differences that exist between
Can you speak up, Julie? You're going quiet.
Sorry. Inputting the differences that exist between them only to the genes or hormones do not seem acceptable to me. Without doubt, in Anna's life, there are songs, laughter, footsteps, dance. On the other hand, to portray Hannah, we will use attributes evoking closure, even bitterness, and a report to a world characterized by mistrust, defensiveness, and a part of rigidity. What can the sociologists say about this type of difference? What do we know of the subjective and objective conditions that determine the one and the other relation to the world? At first glance, nothing or little. To judge the quality of life, the sociologist operates with concepts such as welfare, education, status, and the allocation of resources.
Can we
This
stop?
would amount to, yeah.
That last sentence.
Okay. To judge, and what in particular? Everything?
I think so. In terms of the question, components of concept of resonance.
Yeah.
And it's a sociologist that I take it is writing this. Those are the criteria by which they understand the concept of what a quality of life is. So wouldn't that be then what resonance could be to a certain individual?
I would say it feels that it's like a quite a dry concept of the idea. So they're trying to understand it by a list of things, you know, like GDP or, you know, stuff like that, that feels like it should be measurable, but perhaps it goes to a level of more emotional than that which a sociologist can capture with a list of things like that.
I don't disagree, but by the same token, a concept has got to start somewhere. Just as you said, it's dry. People with certain aspects in that list may have, when you go back 3 or 4 paragraphs where it says Anna leads a happy life and Hannah leads an unpleasant life, even though these 2 lives are similar, you've got it. There might be differences.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
So let's highlight that for now, and we'll see if further in the reading we'll still think those are the best components, or those are components of resonance according to Rosa. Not in general, but according to Rosa. I think we already have a hint that they are not.
Okay.
But we'll see further.
Shall I continue?
Yeah, please.
Okay. This would amount to supposing that Anna's day is more or less representative of superior layers of society enjoying good incomes, while that of Hannah would symbolize the lower social strata having little income. And such an assumption, to be not absolutely implausible, is no less paternalistic, even scandalous. After all, nothing prevents you from imagining that Anna is a simple worker and that Hannah is a careerist whose business is going well. The question then arises, are there structural, cultural, and/or institutional reasons allowing to explain that life takes the turn of Anna's days instead of Hannah's? If so, what are they?
Thank you so much. I'm wondering if another reader would take the lead, because this is, so you see, this text is divided by quotes. That's one of them. To those who are unhappy or depressed, the world appears silent, empty, hostile, and lifeless. Someone else?
Sure, I don't mind having a go.
Yeah.
To those who are unhappy or depressed, the world appears silent, empty, hostile, and lifeless. A first lesson can be drawn from Anna's case. Life succeeds when we love it, have a relationship almost carnal to it, to humans, to spaces, to tasks, to accomplish, to the things and tools in the practice of which we are and with whom we deal. When we like, everything happens as if there exists a vibrant link between us and the world. On the other hand, this bond is formed through what on the one hand, this bond is formed through what social psychologists call intrinsic interests. Anna loves her family, her job, volleyball. She is interested in these domains for what they are. Hannah works to earn money. She needs her family not to be alone and does volleyball to keep the line. On the other hand, if Anna vibrates with the world, it's because her hopes to influence it are intact. She feels that she is accessing her family, her co-workers, volleyball partners, and in each sphere to be able to achieve something. Thereby, she even sees herself as someone mobile, accessible. It allows others, music, faces, challenges to stir and emotionally move her.
Excellent. Thank you. You can continue, actually.
Can I just say something?
Yeah, of course.
I'm going to say
Did you
resonance again.
Yeah. What did you notice?
Well, in terms of, what was it?
Vibrates.
Domains
Vibrant
for what
link.
they are. She enjoys the domains for what they are.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. Where did you see it?
I don't know. Where's it gone? If you go back to the third paragraph up from.
I think I have it here. No, what you?
Oh
just
yeah,
said,
you have, yeah. Yeah, that's it. Sorry.
So, and the notion of interest as well, right?
Yeah.
I thought that the phrase vibrant link
Yeah.
seemed to me to capture, I think, I'm not sure, I'm 3-4 paragraphs into this, but seems to be a nice, possibly synonymous meaning with the word resonance. At least I'd understand it to be that in just plain English.
Yeah, very true. And vibrant link is a synonym of resonance. How about intrinsic interests compared to domains for what they are? How would you link those two things?
My sense of that is that the idea of an intrinsic interest is something that comes from within. So it's something that I would care about irrespective of what the external situation or circumstances would demand, that I would take value in it internally. And
so, go ahead.
Well, and I was going to say that if you're interested in the domains for what they are, that is, volleyball or whatever, it's because you have a value, you place a value on those things. So they're like a sort of object, I guess, that you care about. It's not because somebody else cares about it and you value it because of, I don't know, the social value of a sport, let's say, or being a sports person.
Could we say that domains for what they are, or for what they are, is the definition of the word intrinsic? It is an explicitation of what the word intrinsic means, right?
I'd say yes and no, because I'd say that domains are what then follow. I understand that they might be intrinsic to her, but again, I'd go back to this original concept of as to what the components could be as to the concept, and the components again would be the domains, because there's I think he's a psychologist called Martin Seligman, and he speaks about the domains for a good life, and then he equates those domains to parts of a cheeser. And when I say a bit like a cheese where you cut it in many equal segments, and those segments are life domains, and those domains could be what we've just spoken about.
Okay, I agree with you completely. What I was saying was very basic, actually, is that to me, the way Rosa, as a writer, writes his text, sorry, is he comes up with a component of the concept of resonance, which is intrinsic interests, and he explains that component by saying simply, she's interested, so using she, which is a conceptual character, she is interested in these domains for what they are.
Yeah.
And so, in a sense, domains for what they are is just the explicitation of the word intrinsic. And because intrinsic is not a word we use every day, and sometimes it's a bit difficult. But as Roland was saying, we could imagine situations in which the interest you take into something is not really intrinsic, such as, for instance, caring for cinema less for the cinema itself, for the art of cinema, than for the rewards, such as money, prizes, etc., fame. Or you could imagine that for sport as well. Basketball or volleyball. Do you play basketball to be applauded, greeted by many fans, etc.? Or do you play basketball for the sake of basketball, right? So that's just other examples of what intrinsic interest could mean. Let's continue. We were with Roland. Can you continue with this paragraph?
Yeah. Where are we? Intrinsic interest formation and expectations that are linked to one's own effectiveness on the world are correlated with the experience of social recognition. Anna's life can be described as imbued with a receptive, elastic, and fluid relationship to the world. We should even say flexible, in that it embraces the world and lets the world embrace it. While Hannah's relationship to the world appears mute, stiff, and cold. Anna sees the world as a place of challenges, exciting and enticing possibilities. Hannah perceives the hazards of life as a series of unforeseeable dangers and annoying disturbances. Anna feels carried and transported in the world in life. Hannah feels thrown into the world and exposed to it.
Hello, so it's not to him, it's to it. Sorry, I forgot to edit that. Thank you.
Sorry?
You can continue if you'd like.
Okay. To one who is unhappy or depressed, the world appears dumb, empty, hostile, and sluggish, while they feel cold, dead, empty, and deaf. The axes of resonance between oneself and the world remain silent. On the contrary, does it not follow that a pleasant life to live is characterized by axes of resonance which are open, vibrant, and panting, which give the world its sounds and colors and allow the self to gain sensitivity, emotions, and movements?
One more paragraph, please.
These axes differ from person and culture to culture. You don't have to love volleyball to have the feeling of success in life, or even to have a family. For the polar explorer, ice is something that breathes, lives, and speaks, and the noise of the Formula One or heavy metal guitars can cause a carnal relationship to the world. But can we seriously contest whether the life we enjoy living, or that on the contrary, that we hate to live, are characterized, one by the existence of axes of full and whole resonance, and the other by their absence?
Thank you so much. We're gonna go to the next segment. I make the text a bit bigger to help you. So anybody else for the next segment? The question of a good life has been strictly privatized, an error that it is time to correct.
Should we just highlight a few of the things?
Yeah, of course, good point.
I feel like we missed a couple of things
Thank
there.
you very much, especially in this paragraph, maybe.
Go up a bit. Yeah, that thing about the receptive, elastic, and fluid relationship to the world.
Yeah.
I thought that captured something that was said earlier about the like vibrancy of the relationship. It doesn't necessarily mean intrinsic though, does it? Because you might be it doesn't matter. You might have that fluid relationship with the world if it was extrinsic. But I think what this person's getting at is that you don't.
Well, intrinsic doesn't mean that there is no externality. If you play basketball, for instance, you play basketball in the exterior world with exterior people, etc., etc. Many things are exterior to your body and mind. Yet you can hold an intrinsic interest in that sport. You get it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. It was good to come back to this part of the text, which is almost a definition again of a resonance. Can we find in this definition what would be the components of the resonance? So, for instance, receptivity, elasticity or fluidity, flexibility, and
embracing as well.
Yeah, sorry.
And embracing.
The quality or the capacity actually to embrace the world and be embraced by it. Such as actually the simplest example I can think of right now is a hug. A hug is something you do to resonate with the world, right? You actually literally embrace a part of the world and you are embraced by a part of the world. That's what happens when you give a hug. And that's what I think is the interpretation you can have of free hugs, you know, those things, this custom of free hugs, which is very cute. And it's kind of a way to offer resonance to people who might lack some.
So do you think because of the situation and we're not allowed to give hugs, do you think that we're less resonant and it might be a lesson to learn not only hugs should be, it shouldn't be just reliant on hugs, should it? Resonance should come in many different ways.
Yeah, and we are going to see the problem or the problematicity, if you want, of screens further in the text. And I think we should still try to hug each other through screens if we have no capacity or possibility to do otherwise, you know?
Yeah.
Like for instance, if you live in a country or a continent far away from your family, and the best you can do is a Skype conversation, well, use whatever you have to activate some resonance, you know?
I mean, it might sound silly, but I was thinking, because I was thinking about this, I was thinking, okay, so if you can't hug, if each of your family has something that's very special for them and the rest of the family know it, you know, like a doll or a teddy bear or something. And if you want to do a kind of family hug, then what you do is you put that, say, that special thing in your arms and you have the same feeling as if you were hugging a member of your family and do the hug at the same time. Yeah. And it gives you that resonance.
Yeah, what you're talking about was theorized by Winnicott, the psychologist, with the work of games as ways of symbolization in which you work on your problems with the world.
Yeah,
it's very good, very interesting example.
I wish I could have read all the books in the world and then I wouldn't have to think, but maybe I would think even more then.
Yeah, that's wonderful to actually not read the books and make them your own idea as the books that you haven't read. Then you realize other people have got the same ideas as you. They have stolen your
Yeah.
ideas.
Mhm.
Well, I don't know about stolen.
You know
I
that
think we all imprint each other.
there was this very interesting French thinker named Antonin Artaud, who was saying that Lewis Carroll stole some of his best ideas. Actually, Lewis Carroll came in history before him.
That is funny.
Yeah. And so let's move on with the next segment, unless you have other elements you'd like to highlight in those two paragraphs.
Well, yes, there is.
Yeah, please.
It was just. I'm just going to the paragraph beginning. These axes differ from person, culture to culture.
Yeah.
It in terms of it doesn't. In terms of the intrinsicness, it could be that you could be just driving a car going around in a circle, which could otherwise be known as Formula One.
Yeah.
Or you could be really into heavy metal and causing a lot of noise. But that could be your thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just as an example of.
Yeah, those are counterintuitive examples of what resonance can be, actually. Resonance is not necessarily someone doing this posture with his fingers above his knees in Taylor's pose, you know. I like it, but not everybody would necessarily feel something this way. I actually think they should, but it's okay. Mm-hmm. And yes, there are many ways of experiencing resonance, as we are many people with many different cultures and singularities. Good point. So what should I highlight then?
Well, what you want to, because that's your resonance.
I was thinking, thank you. I was thinking carnal relationship to the world. How about that?
It sounds great, actually. Sounds complicated, though.
Well, carnal, I don't know if it's the right word here in English. It's Google who that proposed it. In phenomenology, there is this concept that gained a lot of fame, and I think it was used in Husserl's thoughts first. It's the concept of Chir, C-H-I-R, which can be translated by the body, but which has to do with the skin, actually. The skin and there's someone saying something, so I'm interested in their comments.
Visceral.
Is it visceral?
Visceral is an interesting translation, yeah.
It's not about skin so much, visceral, but it's about the nervous system.
Yeah.
To do with as if it might be a closer word. I don't know what the original.
It has to do with the body, though.
Yeah.
The visceral has to do with what's inside the belly, I believe.
No, it's the nerves, the nervous system.
Okay.
So it's inside, but it's more than an organ. It's
interesting.
A system.
The nervous system.
Is it to do with? I just wanted to clarify this. Is it to do with the nervous system messages from the brain to the nervous system and the nervous system to the brain, and that's how you feel? Is that what visceral is?
I don't know, because I'm not sure what we are talking about anymore. If we are talking about Chir, which was so here, let's understand what the verbal situation is. I'm using a text which is the translation of a German text, and I'm using this French text translated in English by a robot.
Very European.
So we might be far from the best possible interpretation, translation. Carnal, it doesn't sound bad to me. but I'm not a native English speaker, as you might have noticed already.
Isn't carnal more to do with sex?
With sex?
Yeah,
Feel-
carnal.
Feels
I don't,
more erotic.
not
to me.
necessarily.
Sort of an erotic type of, yeah.
Erotic, but not having anything to do with genitals. It's the whole body. Something a bit religious, actually, as cher, the concept of cher, has to do with something in the Catholic and maybe Protestant religion. The body of the Christ.
Right.
Okay, let's move on.
I just looked up viscera. Sorry, just looking up viscera, and it means literally your organs, the sort of the guts.
Yeah, I think so. The guts. Yeah, I would say the guts.
Of all your bodies.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on. Maybe someone who hasn't read follows.
Where are we?
The question of the good life.
The question of the good life has been strictly privatized, an error that it is time to correct. What then allows these axes to form? It is likely that the contextual, institutional, hormonal, cultural, geographical, climatic, as well as those related to age and gender, play a role in their training. But what is certain is the part played by the conditions imposed by social structures and those of temporality. We experience our situation in the world in different ways, depending on whether we live under the Mediterranean sun or in the freezing air of the tundra. The relationship to the world that is established on the stock market is not that of a musical theatre or workshop, and children or adolescents have different sensitivities to resonance than older people. But everything suggests that the competition and acceleration, because they render anxious, are by nature destructive agents of resonance.
Should we pause here? Because first, as we are working on the components of resonance, we might as well work on the components of what can be seen as the enemy of resonance, which is modernity, or a part of modernity, which is composed of at least two pieces here, according to Rosa: competition
And acceleration.
acceleration. A previous book by Rosa that became famous is on acceleration. It's actually entitled Acceleration. They render anxious. Anxiety is part of modernity. But everything suggests that the competition and acceleration, because they render anxious, are by nature destructive agents of resonance. So we are working here on what would be the enemy of resonance, which help us define resonance in a way.
Well, it can't be Mediterranean sun.
Sorry?
Can't be Mediterranean sun in that second paragraph there.
Yeah.
I think it's something else. I think it could be the stock market.
Yeah, those are examples of situations in which you can be that make you a different subject to resonance.
Yeah.
Is it saying where our environment is depends on how resonant we can be?
Yeah, not only that, but also on how, on what resonance can be to us.
Yeah. So it has a different meaning.
Yeah, exactly. At some point in the introduction, Rosa says that you can even feel resonance at the trade market, because those numbers and values, they can be meaningful to you, and you can have some exhilaration at being there at this moment playing that field. So he's not saying there is specific places and activities that are resonant and some that are not, as we have seen as we saw last time, it's more a matter of relationship to the things or to the activities than it is a matter of substance.
Which is why we can be exhilarated but not accelerated.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah.
Can I ask a question on that? Example, my son used to play lots of computer games and he got very excited by them. He was quite young. They were very, you know, sort of designed to make him sort of react. And he was always saying that they were what he really enjoyed, but I noticed over time that he became quite tired and a bit depressed and kind of in front of the screen the whole time. So I was trying to say, why don't we go out more into the park or into nature and kind of try and get a bit more of a... Basically, he thought he was really into these games, but they were designed to make him like that.
Yeah.
So my question is it really about what someone says or thinks that makes them resonate, or is it that we can question some of those things because it's more based on, you know, a lack of options or understanding about what's going on with them?
I think that to have the full answer to this question, you would need to read the whole book or almost. But to have a partial answer to this question, let's go further in this excerpt and we will have this passage on screens.
Okay.
So where were we and who was reading? I think it was Nia.
Yeah.
And I interrupted you at they induce.
They induce fear everywhere, fear of becoming addicted or being left behind. To regress, or conversely, to simply keep place in the world, they force people to run ever faster in always doing more. Fear, however, we said, founds a problematic relationship to the world. We know.
Why?
Why don't we know more on this? Because of...
Would it help if I make it bigger?
Yeah, possibly, yeah. Why don't we know more on this? Because the question, that's much better, because the question of the good life has been strictly privatized, an error that it is time to correct, and the social philosophy will help us there. To begin with, and this is the most important point in my opinion, the mode of relationship to the world that the regime founds, promotes and imposes growth of modernity, both institutional and capitalist.
I think there's a syntactic problem. This sentence has to be reworked, but let's pretend we understand it and we go
Let's start again. To begin with, and this is the most important point in my opinion, the mode of relations to the world that the regime founds promotes and imposes a growth of modernity, both institutional and capitalist, by its very nature, and becomes more hostile to resonance than it can be favourable. The desire and need to increase our reach on the world, to expand our options, to increase our resources, we put into a position of having access to the world and dominate it, and we dominate it.
Hello,
but
thank
grasping
you.
and dominating generate...
Pause, maybe. No. I think there are components of... Yeah, what do you think?
He's talking about growth.
Yeah, so this sentence needs to be reworked for sure. Yet, I think we have components such as what?
I thought he was saying what we were saying last week and the week before, which is that if there's a capitalist regime,
yeah,
it makes it more hostile to resonance, but we have this desire in our world, so therefore our world is more hostile to resonance.
Exactly. I think you're making a good point here. What Rosa is saying is that the capitalist system or culture in which we live is not intrinsically, it's not intrinsically impossible in it to feel resonance, yet it is more hostile than it is favorable, which is that I'm sorry, I'm paraphrasing it again and again, which is that it's still possible, yet it doesn't help.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to discuss that more at one point, but not in a moment, because that it's possible is a very interesting scenario.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like when someone gave us an essay title, is it possible for women to be equal, or something like that? What I'm trying to say is that we can look at it in two ways. We can have private resonance in a capitalistic world.
Yeah.
So in our privacy, we can be intrusive, intuitive inside us. But in a capitalistic world, because it's of the nature of it, it stops you from having that resonance.
Although this article is not saying that, though, isn't it? If we just to base it on this article, then the article is kind of suggesting that you can, but it's then in what way? It's almost, do you view your glass half full or half empty? Seems to be almost a bit of the guide here, in that you choose to be happy or you choose not to be happy. But I go along with what Susie said in a way. Well, going along with this article, I think there's a tiny bit more there in that last paragraph in terms of, I spoke earlier about just the stock market, and then here, when it talks about capitalism, I think it's like the sponge of a cake. It looks nice, but it's a bit like whipped cream. There's no substance to it. And I think that's the issue.
I think what we can say is that the relationship between resonance and its potential enemy is nuanced by the person who tries to describe it. It is not saying that the potential enemy renders resonance impossible, yet it makes it harder.
Yeah, I think when we question, do we have a choice? The clue was in when he was talking about environments. Rosa was talking about environments. Somebody in one environment might think they have a choice. Someone in another environment, going through the same thing, faced with the same problems, might not have a choice, and therefore it's not resonance for them. And I think this is an age-old question. Do we really have a choice?
That's a good question. Let's keep this question in mind. Let's have Niall finish this paragraph, maybe, if he's still around.
I am. I've just moved from another internet place. I've got rubbish internet still in my house. Let me just... I haven't got it on my screen at the moment.
No problem.
Wait a minute. Okay. Yeah. Where are we? The desire.
Yeah.
Hostile to resonance. The desire and need to increase our reach on the world, to expand our options, to increase our resources, we put in a position of having access to the world and dominate it. But grasping and dominating generates attitudes, objectifying and instrumentalizing, in reverse of the relations to resonance. The world becomes a silent reality with which we are not supposed to relate. This applies to the first chief for the mode of competition. When we are in competition with people, it is impossible to train the least axis of resonance with them. And it is the same when we act by obeying the conditions of this quasi-totalitarian regime's acceleration that modernity has become.
Elaborate and maintaining axes of resonance takes time, requires listening, sensitivity, openness, and supposes to be able to admit, to be touched, and to change.
Thank you. So first, can we see some of what are the traits of the enemy of resonance? What are the traits of the enemy?
Domination, grasping, instrumentalizing, objectifying.
Dominating, objectifying.
Grasping.
Yeah.
It suggests greed.
Very good.
I wanted to ask you also a question, which was the world becomes a silent reality with which we are not supposed to relate. Is that is as a saying it's a capital or some form of capitalism creates that silent reality deliberately so that we don't relate to it?
Oh, that's a too deep a question for me to answer. My answer would be too subjective.
Okay.
But I think you found another component of the enemy, the silent reality.
Yeah.
And next time we will study silence according to an ecologist, to an anthropologist ecologist, who actually thinks silence is the key to resonance. So we will see silence in a different light.
We have to put competition as well. Sorry.
Yes, thank you. Where is it?
Sure.
But
Camus was saying there's something about the unreasonable silence of the world.
Yeah, we are going to see Camus' position summarized by Rosa very soon, actually.
Okay.
So we could name as well as a component of the enemy
regime,
quasi-totalitarian. Totalitarian being the quality of a state that decides everything for everyone instead of subjects deciding and feeling by themselves, you know, being able to feel the way they do by themselves and not being imposed something by something that by some entity that alienates them.
Can I throw in a couple of things I've been thinking about? So I feel like there's a bit of a logical gap here.
Yeah.
So it feels like a bit of a leap to me to say competition and acceleration are destructive agents of resonance here. Okay. Because what if, for example, you are intrinsically motivated by competition? It's actually interesting that one of the examples that's given of the woman who feels resonant is that she likes volleyball or netball. But what if one of the reasons, consciously or not, she feels intrinsically, it's an intrinsic interest, is because she enjoys the competitive nature of it?
Yeah, it's a good twist you give to the criticism of intrinsicness, interesting way of thinking about it. I'm wondering if Rosa's answer would not be that in a way, in a way, competition is necessarily and always an extrinsic trait of the thing you are into. For instance, no matter what is the sport I am into, competition is not intrinsically part of it.
Yeah, and also I think when you were saying about competition, why is she feeling so relaxed about competition? What is it in her and in her environment that's made her feel so relaxed about the competition and enjoy the enjoyment of competition?
Yeah, good point. I think it's because she likes volleyball in itself that she doesn't care about competition. It's at least understands competition and intrinsic interest, is that competition is actually something extrinsic to the sport itself.
But there's also some kind of measurement judgment in it as well. She's measured, you know, she enjoys competition, she's measuring herself against something. And that is something that's learned. It's a behavior that's learned. And I know from my own personal private school, because I got a scholarship and went, that's one of the things that they say, competition's intrinsic to being a leader in society.
Yeah.
You know? Now, I always question that. I always got told off as well. But, you know, it's there. So you have to question, why is she enjoying competition? Or is it the competition, like Antoine said? Is it the competition or is it the actual sport? But she likes to measure herself. It's the measurement that worries me there. That doesn't sound, it sounds like her resonance, but not a resonance that I would agree with.
Is there a difference between, you know, studying the sport, you know, understanding if you are improving yourself and therefore measuring yourself against the other person or team in order to see if you are doing better intrinsically, versus the idea of defeating someone else? There's a difference in tone there.
Yeah, the same word as competition, for an example, can be appreciated and lived in a very different way.
Yeah.
Depends with what end we have it, though, isn't it? Because the word actual competition actually in a capitalistic world does mean what it means. It means basically eating up the next company or getting rid of the next company so that you can dominate, if not actually rule. I think where I think, sorry, just let me finish the sentence. Sorry. I think there was also a bit earlier where in the person that we've been quoting, she was just talking about it wasn't about winning or losing. It was just about taking part. So the idea in terms of the intrinsicness for me was that it was a flow activity, a bit like tennis could be for you, Julie. It doesn't need to be about the winning or anything. It's just the fact of taking part. And I think that's where this article is. I think that's what I took from it. But you know, what Roland and what Susie said, I'm pretty cool with too. But that's what the article was kind of saying.
Sorry.
Can I say why I disagree with what you said before I forget?
Yeah.
The thing about competition in a more capitalist sort of environment, yes, absolutely, it can be very destructive, very you know, kind of Gordon Gekko-ish, but there's also the opportunity to for companies to compete against each other to create better services and products that will benefit the end user, and that can be a force for good.
So is that in terms of efficiency?
Instead of competition?
Thank you. For now, I'm wondering if we could take a 2 minutes break, because it's more than an hour that we've been discussing very bravely. And I'm wondering if we could take the opportunity of this being a new segment to continue in, let's say, how about 5 minutes?
Yeah, that's good.
So to me,
can you keep the text up a little bit further? Go a little bit further than that.
It's actually a text you can find in the chat thing of the river if you want it. But yes.
Thank you.
And so it's 6, or it's actually 7. Let's meet when it's 11. Okay. Bye.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Susie, you're in the dark.
Yeah, sorry, I was just reading. I
No,
haven't.
no, no, no. It makes quite it's just that juxtaposition. Niall's in bright light.
I'm all right. I can't
should
see
put-
me.
I should put my I should put my white mask on then, shouldn't I? This is the room I use for Zoom for mask work.
Of course, because you do your clowning as well, don't you?
Yeah, yeah. I've been making a few short films. I did one with Lenora on Zoom, sort of a mask one, but she's made us some masks because before COVID, last year, she made a mask from plaster cast, and she's also made herself a mask. So we're going to do some work with that.
Oh, I like that. I like the sound of that. That sounds like a bit of fun, that does.
Well, I put my mask, I put it on, I dressed it up into this translucent angel.
Wow.
who is supposed to become my conscience.
That's brilliant. I like the way that you sort of extrapolated and then it's become something else. It's not just a mask.
Well,
The idea of angels sounds quite positive as well, doesn't it?
well, the idea was supposed to be your guardian angel.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and for me, if I was thinking of it in those terms, I think my guardian angel is my conscience.
Okay.
So it could be a good guardian angel or a bad one, depending on which way I want to look at it. And I was going to do a sort of a very loose sort of sketch on it.
Okay.
In stand-up comedy, but I didn't have the guts to. But I still have the idea in my head, and I still have what I want to say in my head. But I haven't had the guts to do it yet.
When I think of Guardian Angel, I think of the film Wings of Desire.
Oh yeah,
Wim
yeah.
Wenders. Oh,
Yeah.
love that film. Sometimes I just watch a clip of it. Did just the other day with the song by U2, one in the background.
Yeah, that's the music by Nick Cave as well.
Yeah, yeah. Nick Cave's music is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
But I also like it. There's Peter Falk as well, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
In Wings of Desire. Just, you know, that he played another great role that wasn't Columbo.
Yeah.
And that which, you know, went global. It was good.
I love those kind of movies. What's really nice, after this class, my son, who is I would consider highly intelligent and is totally not in the system, he's now come to stay with me.
Oh, good.
And yeah, which is nice during COVID. And he does a film night, and he always chooses the most peculiar films. and I feel like I've been sitting in the movie, you know, those independent movies. But it's just like, because there are a lot of them from Czechoslovakia and Russia and different films like that, and some really interesting films he chooses. And he also puts adverts in, sort of weird adverts as well. So it really is like a treat. I have my philosophy, and then I have, you know, my film night.
Yeah, no, that's good.
In my philosophizing state.
Brilliant.
So let's move back to where we were, if that's okay, unless someone, I think Roland wanted to say something, and maybe Lee. No, not yet. Well, whenever someone wants to say something, they can. We haven't heard James's beautiful voice yet. Is he still here?
I can read, yeah, if you want me to.
Yeah, please.
Where does it start? No wonder.
Yeah.
No wonder, then, that modernity from its beginnings has been characterised by fear in the face of this world that has become silent in the face of the inability to establish a dynamic relationship with it. It's that which Hegel, and especially Marx, already expressed with the concept of alienation. We remember in particular these passages from manuscripts of 1844 in which Marx describes as the consequence and cause of the capitalistic mode of production, the alienated relationship, because external, dead, silent, from man to his work, to his fellows, to nature, and therefore to oneself. Alienation has thus become a key concept of philosophy and modern social psychology, and it has been reformulated to understand this fear in the face of the calling of the relationship to the world. Lukács forged the concept of reification, reworked today by Honneth. Social misery and what causes the feeling of failing one's life are referred here to a relationship to the world, to nature, and to oneself that makes us relate to it as dead, cold, and external things which we are unable to make, speak, and sing.
Ah, interesting. Thank you so much. So a few traits of modernity, or at least modernity as it in its darker aspects, are a concept we've already seen: reification. We talked about reification and commodification last time. We haven't talked yet about some others, such as I was thinking of social misery.
Yeah.
We did talk a bit about it when we were discussing the video that presented the small clip, the cartoon thing that presented Rosa's concept of resonance. The feeling of failing one's life. And Hannah was a good character for embodying this feeling. And this idea of not being able to make things speak or and sing. Okay, James, can you continue?
Yeah, okay. For their part, Horkheimer and Adorno evoke this relationship of failure in the world, that by wanting to dominate, we're now unable to marry in any mimetic relationship as a domination of instrumental reason. But outside traditions of the left, this growing silence of the world has become a major theme. Thus, Weber tried to apprehend it by means of this very telling concept of Entzauberung, which we have translated into English and French by disenchantment and disenchantment. For Weber, disenchantment. For Weber to the
battery 80%, connected to Fabian.
I don't know whose computers it is, but he's not happy.
Okay.
They
For
are
Weber
not happy.
to the rationalised world gives up sing. Finally, Camus and the French existentialists see it in the birth of the absurd, which comes from the dissonance between the uncontrollable call of men to enter the world and the infinite silence that opposes them.
Yeah,
Next
I
paragraph.
think here we must edit by adding singing. Finally, Camus and the French existentialists see in it the birth of the absurd, which comes from the dissonance between the uncontrollable call of men to enter the world and the infinite silence that it opposes them. You may remember of two famous examples of the absurd in the existentialist sense. One of them is in Camus' philosophy, or actually two of them very famous are in Camus' philosophy. Which are those?
I was thinking of The Outsider, where you've got the protagonist who's arrested for a crime where he defends himself, if I remember rightly, but he gets put away for it. But the worst thing in it is not the fact that he shoots. The worst bit of it is that he didn't tell his mum, or that he didn't go to see his mum. There's almost a sense there that it's démesuré. It's not it's not in keeping. It's not in I don't know. I can't explain
Not
that bit.
resonant, anyway. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, that's it in a way. But the last bit there, which comes from the dissonance between the uncontrollable call of men to enter the world and the infinite silence, that it opposes them. That bit, the infinite silence, would have been the judgment, I suppose, that he then got, despite the fact that there he was, just wanting to be out. That was it. Sorry, in the book, he rather than go to see his mum who isn't well, he spends the day on the beach, and they use that against him because that is the day when the incident happens. And
to make it even simpler, we could say the only fact that he kills someone for no reason is absurd. And you find such maybe there's a part of racism in this killing, we're not sure, but even the fact that it's not explicited that he is racist makes it all the more absurd, because if he if he had killed that guy because he was Arabic, and if it had been his motivation, at least it would have made some kind of sense, a bad kind of sense, but at least some kind of sense. But killing this guy just for no reason because he has a gun, is it a gun or is it a knife? I don't remember.
Gun.
I think it's a gun because there's the Cure song "Shooting an Arab," you know.
Yeah.
And so and some people in the US, they just do that too, you know. Are they really racist? Some people, I mean, in Nice, there's this guy who had a truck and killed so many people on the promenade, and some of them were Arabic, and some of them were from any race, you know, and none of them were rich people, none of them were capitalist princes, you know.
It's like when I was driving through America back in the 90s, and I was told, it was like the first time I'd driven through America, and I was told not to look at another driver in case they took that as an excuse to shoot me.
Yeah.
Were you in the South by any chance, Susie?
No, I was actually, we were living in Canada at the time, and we were traveling from Vancouver to Montreal, but we decided to, you know, go to America. I think the petrol was cheaper or something, and drove through America to get to it. And that's what I was warned.
Wow.
Not to look at another driver in case they shot me.
Two other examples. One is in his Camus is the example, mythical example of the Sisyphus rising stones, holding stones and them falling again, the same stone actually, Sisyphus. And another instance is in the book by Sartre, which in French is La Nausée, nausea. The nausea. When the main character, his name is gonna come back to me, sits beside a tree and comes up to the realization that the root of that tree has no meaning or purpose and is just there because it's there. And so that's an example of dissonance, as opposed, for instance, of an experience of nature in which you find that the tree has a soul, a form of animism, for instance. There are other forms of religion that give some importance to trees, but let's go no further into that topic because I haven't prepared it. And let's go further in that text. I would like to add, James. James?
Yes, I'll carry on. Sorry about that. I would like to add some interesting compliments which I owe to the Berlin theologian Ellen Ubeshar. It is by no doubt a coincidence that in the Christian tradition, the fact of placing in a relationship an absolute silence in relation to the world is described as a sin. Refraining from any relationship, from any quest, answer, because in his splendour, mankind has become for itself a sufficient answer. There are the main aspects of the state of sin.
So I apologize. I wasn't able to edit well those two sentences. I hope you get the general meaning of this paragraph.
I'm sorry, I don't.
The idea is very simple. Is the idea that being in a relationship with the world, being silent, being in a silent relationship with the world is a sin.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, what I didn't get was the mankind bit. It was to do with, oh, moved it down. Yeah, because of his splendor, mankind has become for itself sufficient answer.
Yeah, that's very easy. Very good point. It's one definition of modernism, actually, of modernity or modernism. Is when God has disappeared as the main purveyor of value, as a transcendent figure that gives value to everything. And God, as Nietzsche puts it, is replaced by man. And that's one of the ways Nietzsche interprets the death of God. It's that if you kill God, but you put man at its place instead of God, it's still a religious, transcendent figure that you create.
Oh, that's interesting, because
So, yeah,
I'm thinking about nihilists. When we talk about nihilists and how they think they're more important than God, some nihilists.
Yeah.
So in the Christian religion, obviously that would be a sin.
Yeah. In classical philosophy, God is at the
head,
the root,
yeah,
and at the above everything,
yeah,
encompassing everything. And you even have that in Spinoza's philosophy, pantheist or pantheistic. God is everything. That's the difference in Spinoza's philosophy, which is considered by Israeli. I will show you the cover of the book as the figure of modernity, but I think I said that last class already.
Yeah.
But still, Spinoza is a key figure of the classical age, in the sense that for him, God is the main figure and not man.
Right.
Whereas in modernity, man, as the main actor of progress, becomes the agent, the essential agent, and what is praised.
And modernity, would it consider that man was the agent of God as well?
Yeah, you can go as far as that, but I think it's already postmodern, in my opinion. It's Nietzsche is the beginning of postmodernism, as he says that it's not God that has created man, but man that has created God.
Well, that could be true. Who knows?
It could be true.
Can I just say?
Yeah.
Given what you've just said, made me think about, in terms of modernism, there's a view of certain men or women that their success is purely down to them and not the environment in which they're brought up, which kind of reflects what you were saying, because God could be said to be, if you believe in a world being him or she being a being or enveloping everything, then it wouldn't be just down to one person to have got to any kind of summit all by themselves. So I could think of a certain person in the States at the moment who might believe that they are that referential figure of having done it all by themselves, which would be untrue.
Yeah, of course. I don't know the psyche of Elon Musk, of Jeff Bezos, and whoever, like Bill Gates, etc. But we can assume that sometimes they feel this way.
Thanks.
And okay, let's move on, because it's very interesting. One point though, I said that we can understand Nietzsche as a postmodernist figure, but I gave the wrong reason why. Because the reason I gave is actually a modern way of thinking still, replacing God with man by saying it's not God who created man, but man who created God.
Okay.
Why Nietzsche can be considered postmodernist is that he goes in many ways against the naive, if you will, conception of progress that you find in Hegelian philosophies, in Hegel, which is that the history will be developed further and further as a form of truth becoming aware of itself throughout creatures such as us who have consciousness. So if nobody has anything to say, let's move on and finish the text, and then we can have a discussion. Yeah? Unless Niall wants to say something?
No. Go for it.
So we're here. I would like to add, no, we've read that. If I stick to, James?
If I stick to what I observe as a sociologist, many things we moderns are driven to can be explained as panic reactions to the silencing of axis of resonance. If we sound the elevators, the supermarkets with pipe music, that gives us the feeling that the world is still singing, that it is not become cold and dumb. If we wear headphones, it's because we no longer believe that the real world carries qualities of resonance. We don't relate to people with which we travel in the metro, train or bus, nor with those we meet in the street. We estimate a priori that the outside world is silent and try to compensate for that with the music from our Walkman, practicing a kind of self-resonance.
Yeah, let's move on. This concept is kind of interesting, though. We will maybe discuss it. Continue, please. Last paragraph.
If emails and SMS give rise to such a state of addiction, if we count our friends on Facebook, our followers on Twitter, if we look forward to the comments, the likes of social networks, it is because they still signal to us all a certain resonance of the world. The world considers us real. It answers us, we are connected to it. This is also the reason why I believe the acoustic signal or vibration accompanying a call, news or contact requests not only do not leave us cold but penetrate our nervous system until its depths. They are signals of the resonance of the world. For our misfortune, they are not very persistent. We need that these fetishes renew themselves, multiply, maybe because they are only resonant illusions.
Interesting words here. We are going to continue with another reader. Thank you very much, James. Anybody else?
I don't mind doing it.
Please.
Shall I start from our relationship?
Yeah.
Our relationship to the world is losing its character, more and more sensitive and above all bodily. Either way, there are some good reasons to believe that if a relationship to the world that is only established through an interposed screen would not necessarily result in a total absence of resonance, it would certainly induce a pathology of resonance. I don't mean to say that screens themselves are a bad thing or a source of,
of trouble.
Yeah, I've just got to move my screen now. It's a source of trouble. I don't mean to say that the screens themselves are a bad thing or a source of trouble or pathologies, but it's still the most amazing fact of our advanced modernity that our relation with the world go more and more by screens, especially those computers and smartphones. We work on screens, we communicate through screens, sometimes even with friends or colleagues who are in a neighbouring room or even in the same. We play on screens. It is still on screens that we seek to entertain and distract ourselves. even getting sometimes real artistic experiences. Screens come in also in our sex life. It is through them that we inform about all aspects of the world, and that we resorting to it more and more when it comes to our immediate physical environment. As a result, our relationship to the world is losing its sensitive character more and more, and above all body. Or the axis of resonances that are so essential to our feeling of living will always and necessarily involve a strong bodily component.
Thank you so much. Someone else?
Well, I think it's my turn now.
Yeah.
Fortunately, modernity also has powerful antidotes. It cannot simply be reduced to the devastation it would have subjected the residents, quite the contrary. It discovered and invented quite new resonance spheres, and incredibly powerful ones. For many humans, sport, for example, is a fabulous resonance ground between the world and the body. That we have and that we are. We don't count anymore the stories of young people who, through and in football, have made the experiment of almost mystical resonance with the world. In revenge, and I will limit myself here to asserting it without further prejudice, mastery of the body and its abilities as practiced in the fitness room would rather proceed from reification, which I'll need to be explained again, in that it is part of a silent relationship to the world and a logic of growth. That is where Hannah will go when Anna prefers to go dancing.
Yeah, can someone explain reification again?
Is it kind of worshipping in some way? Worship.
Yeah, it comes from the word res, such as in res publica, republic, which
Like
means
things.
thing. Yeah, thing in its material aspect. So reification is to turn here yourself into a thing in the fitness room.
Does that mean like what we'd call a god almost?
No, that would be a deification.
A material god.
Yeah, if you will, but I think the deity aspect is not present here.
No, but I mean, when we were talking about man replacing God.
It's two different things, I think.
Okay, right.
Okay, let's finish.
Someone just explain a bit that paragraph, because I read it out, but I didn't take it in.
Do you want to read it again, or someone else?
I'd just like to, for someone just to give me a bit of an encapsulation of what that last bit was, if someone can. Sorry.
The bit that stood out for me in this was about the difference at the end between Hannah choosing to go to the gym and Anna preferring to go to dance. That like there's something different between those two acts, and one of them is about the ultimately like hollow desire to improve oneself by being fitter or being stronger or more toned, and the other that is about a kind of authentic connection and a more meaningful vibrant connection to the world, which in this case he's using the example of dancing and I think football.
Okay.
Because of this level of like the bodily and the earthy and the natural kind of coming together without there having to be this like set of external pressures and values that are making you want to be physically fitter.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And also, we don't count anymore the stories of young people who, through and in football, have made the experience almost mystical resonance with the world. And it's saying that modernity, or whatever you call it, it's also, it's almost masking that. It's almost fooling us, because it's not resonant. So, in sport, I'm talking about some of the stuff that, you know, like, I suppose if you think about football, who's going to win the FA Cup, for instance, that's fooling us into a different kind of thinking than saying, wow, you know, look at all those people enjoying that game.
Yeah.
For whatever reason they're enjoying that game. So there's, you know, there's modernity fools us into reducing our resonance by having antidotes to help us be fooled, like competition.
Yes, yet I think this paragraph, if I understood it, has to do with what we can call defining modernity as a pharmacon. I mentioned last term the pharmacon about Stigler and Derrida. Pharmacon is the Greek word that gave the word pharmacy nowadays. It became famous. It's in Plato's philosophy dialogues, and it became famous thanks to Derrida, who said a pharmacon is something such as the writing, which is at the same time a poison and an antidote, a good and a bad thing, a good and an evil thing. And here he's saying that modernity, even though it is something that is more going against resonance than it is favoring it, it still created a lot of ways in which we can experience resonance.
But that somehow some of those things are synthetic, or like that they kind of shortcut to the feeling. So like when he's saying about the texts and the SMSs and stuff, they create this parallel feeling or illusion, like almost like a fake version of the real feeling of resonance. So they're like, there's just enough there to keep you feeling that maybe there's a way to connect or a way to feel that resonance, but it's not true and real.
I think you're referring here to what was this last paragraph, and when he was saying losing its sensitivity, its sensitive character more and more, and above all, body.
It's like you know, what was rather nice in this COVID is the young footballer who's you know, campaign. What's his name?
Matt Rashford.
Yeah, he's campaigning to feed children, and he's trying to do it beyond November as well. But that's a sense that's really, really lovely, and it gives us that sense of resonance, you know, in football. Whereas, you know, if we hear about, I don't know, in football, if we hear about someone losing, we might not actually relate to it in the same way as other people do. But Rashid, we will.
Let's finish the text and then we conclude with a conversation together. On top of a mountain or by the sea, moved by the elements, men feel in relation to a sphere of living resonance. Who was reading? Scott, you want to go further?
I thought you were, you see there. Sport is not, however, the only sphere of resonance that modernity has engendered. There are others just as powerful, to start with art. Resonance is not by chance a term borrowed from music. At the theatre, at the cinema, at the concert, we are touched and gripped. Life and flows pass through us. Laughter and tears are good testimonies. Nature has also become, for us moderns, a sphere of central and unavoidable resonance. on top of a mountain, in the forest or by the sea, moved by the elements humans feel in relation to a living resonant sphere, painting and resonating precisely. I'm stopping there because I just...
Gilly? How about Gilly?
Julie?
Sorry, I'm just unmuting myself. Okay,
The soul?
The soul, even the body that we are, expands in such moments. It is, by the way, why many of us spend so much on their desire and their love of the countryside, and why we experience such fear in the face of the ecological crisis. We will never be able to destroy nature. It will survive us no matter what. But what we can destroy, on the other hand, is nature as a sphere of resonance, which would be a real disaster. There is finally the politics. Democracy is the capital element from which we can enter into a resonant relation, carrying responses with public institutions. But alienation and gloom that increasingly prevails in this area seem well indicate to us that this quality of resonance is on the point of getting lost. Politics, its organization, and citizens do not deceive, do not answer us anymore. But beyond that, what signals to us, each in its own way, the crisis of democracy, that of ecology, and I would be tempted to add the fitness room, is that the logic of the unlimited and institutionalized growth of modern capitalism is burying, if not destroying, our resonant spheres, and that what society and ourselves we need seems to fall apart a little more every day.
Thank you so much. So now if you have anything you'd like to say, you're more than welcome.
There's a lot to say, really. I mean, it's interesting that they talk about nature and art and all the other things that we find almost a mystical experience from quite often. Yet they talk about politics. When I think of some of the old socialites, that almost gave me mystical experiences when I, sometimes got the pleasure to meet them, and yet now I still love nature, art and theatre and all those things. Some of the things that we might be dearly not having during COVID, but we've got our belly full of politics. Mm-hmm. And it's and surely the ordinary person from the politics can recognize that there isn't resonance in the politics anymore. Mm-hmm. There isn't truthfulness, there isn't the openness, if there's anything that comes out of this COVID, I would love to think that people will be a bit more wiser about politics.
Yeah, well, I think we ought not to generalize too much about politics, because I'm sure, as in any domain, there are people who are genuine, authentic actors in the sphere of politics. I could name the ones that I find so. They might differ or not from the ones you find so. But I wouldn't generalize about politics, because there are many actors in politics, people who are not even named politicians, who are very sincere and active in a very good way, But
I'm talking about in politics. I'm talking about the information and the communication that we get through politics.
Okay.
I remember some politicians being very sort of downright truthful and saying how it was, or we thought they were anyway. But anyway, I'll let someone else carry on, because that's what I remember. It's more about the communications, what the politics has done, and it's made me more alienated than ever from politics.
I understand. I think we are many in your case.
But where's the resonance in it?
Yeah.
So
On
I
the
think,
positive, go
I
Niall.
think Hannah Arendt had a lot to say about modernity and politics, and about how modernity has smoothed away the actual idea of talking to each other and making points. And it's like in the same way we're talking about here with sport, how we have football teams, and your great point about Rashford, about using sport in a sense of politics there. But an even more contemporary example is the way that at the moment the smallest football teams in this country are having money taken away from them, or are not being given the money, which could be because all the concentration is on the big football teams. And the big football teams are displacement of involvement. They're about people just going to football in the same way as we're looking at screens and watching things. And we could think of politics in that same way with, people like Hannah Arendt talking about how we don't really connect with each other. And we don't ask questions. We don't go out in that sort of Socratic way and ask people questions.
Yeah, very.
It comes back to that idea of whether competition can be good or bad in a way. There's the sort of the competitive element of politics seems to squash down the collaborative benefit of kind of the competing ideas that can be discussed. With pros and cons attached to them. Whereas if you're just focused on winning for the sake of winning, then that becomes a very different chamber.
Yeah, this idea of a contest or competition, contest of people who are trying to be recognized as the most relevant or the most effective person in a domain is comprehended by some specialists of Greece and of philosophy as the birth of not only democracy but of philosophy itself. The fact that we are on the same level to argue, or actually to develop an argument or a bunch of arguments, and we have to listen to each other so that the best argumentation is winning. And it's different from what Susie was developing, I think, which is maybe, if I understood her right, the fact that in politics, it's more and more rhetoric way of speaking that has not much to do with rational arguments and listening to what the other person has to say and trying to understand if they are winning by their intellect.
And also, they're not rationalizing with the rest of the world. They're not listening to the rest of the world. So they have this rhetoric, which they're always patting off, which it doesn't bear any relevance. It really doesn't.
There's some positive.
Yeah.
And just thinking about the text, and it was talking about nature, that really, that we could be moved by the elements. There was a lovely little paragraph right at the top, which was talking about the mountains and the sea. And one of the joys of being here in Brighton is the very fact that we have got the sea, and probably the same with Nice. And how you can't fail to be moved just by the sheer movement that's going on. But I thought juxtaposing that in terms of when there was the talk about art, it made me think of, I don't really know what great art is, to be honest with you. I've been told what great art is. I'm not that deep in terms of what I see, but I can stand, and as I have done, stand in front of the Mona Lisa and try to look at that picture and see the beauty of the woman and what the story might be. And I think there, in a way, there's almost the context that where I think the fact that it's almost out of time. It's like great literature. They've taken time to amass such a great story that can make us feel for the characters or the personages, which with Pulp Fiction you might not get, because it's done very quickly to satisfy a basic need to have a cliffhanger of the story from one chapter to another. I don't know, but and I think that's where the modern capitalism is a tiny bit. Again, it's that kind of sponginess. It's harder to engage with. Whereas with, there's a quality to some of the other aspects.
Yeah.
So.
And just to go on from that, Scott, taking that passage, we mustn't forget in relation to the sphere of living resonance. And I think that's important that we remember in relation, because we're talking about relationships in a way.
Yep.
We're talking about relationships to the world.
Mm-hmm.
No, thanks.
One thing I wanted to add, because we mentioned the fact that there was this idea of being on common ground to make your argument and have people admit that you are right based on their reason, right? That's also one key element of modernity, which is the idea that there are universal truths. And that is one of the criticisms that has been made to modernity or even modernism. It's the idea that a certain culture, which is to say Europe, could impose to other cultures the truth it has found, and disrespect the difference of all other cultures and their rights to have other truth. So postmodernism, in a sense, would be the recognition of the idea that there is no ultimate truth, that even the mathematics can be disputed because they are grounded on a specific cultural interpretation or view of the world. And I don't agree with this postmodern criticism. In this sense, I feel that I am modern because I'm influenced by contemporary physicists. Yet, I think those criticisms are very important to deflate a bit the cultural, how do you say, cultural bias of Europe.
Yeah.
And sense of superiority, if you will. There's one thing that occurred to me about this is that what we might say is resonance, similar to what you're saying. You know, if one area dominates another area, and they all come together to have a common acceptance, that resonance might not actually be right. I mean, ethically. Are we saying that resonance has to be ethically right, or resonance is resonance?
Yeah, we discussed that last time, saying that. No problem. If there's someone, for instance, let's take the most obvious example that's coming up again and again. There's even a word for dropping his name. Adolf Hitler comes in play, or Mussolini, or someone else who's reigning right now, and is able to move the crowd and have the crowd resonate with their speech. Does that mean resonance is good in this case? Well, I think here it's not the concept of resonance that Rosa is building, actually, and we might have to go further into the reading to try to differentiate the one he's building from the one we may come to intuitively when we think of resonance that way. So to conclude, I would like you to think about something that we might have the energy to do right now, which is any suggestion to how we could rename the title of this course, taking into account the traits of modernity described by Rosa.
Is
So
resonance resonant?
interesting. So I remind us the title is Thinking Our Present. And then the task of modernity. And I was telling you at the beginning of the course that maybe we didn't interrogate yet enough the word task. And I was wanting you to think about it from the point of view of what we've done today. What would be the task of modernity if we understand modernity with its bad components? And I want to remind you that we came first with the conclusion that what defines modernity, it's already a first task, I'm going to put one, is reflecting or thinking on, if you prefer, reflecting about, is that correct?
Yeah.
Reflecting about the
Yes,
specificity.
On would be good.
On? Yeah, I think so. Reflecting on the singularity of our period, which is a way to rephrase my title, right? That the task of modernity is to reflect on the singularity of our period, which is what we came as a conclusion to in the first term when we studied Was ist Aufklärung, what is the Enlightenment. And now, what would be the second conclusion with these texts and what we've done so far in the second term?
how to define resonance.
Yeah.
Or how to achieve resonance.
Exactly. And therefore, how to achieve resonance, which can be equated to how to compensate its own bad effects or drawbacks, or you see what I mean?
Yeah. So like the limitations of resonance.
Yeah, the fact that modernity actually makes resonance less easy, but yet modernity can fight this tendency of itself. So compensate its own.
I think if you were to say the task of compensating for modernity, you might be capturing more closely the fact that we have, I think what's being implied is that the challenge or the task is to reclaim, well, it's to challenge the fact that modernity creates these dissonant relationships. And so we have to compensate for that. So the task is to compensate for modernity because modernity is the thing that's creating these
Very good
dissonances.
Yeah, excellent, I think.
Anybody has to achieve, but shouldn't you put how to achieve resonance? Not just how to achieve, but how to achieve resonance.
Yeah, that was one of the things.
So how to compensate for modernity and achieve
resonance.
resonance.
Yeah, very good. How to compensate. Yeah, very good. Excellent. It's good teamwork. Anybody has anything to add? No?
I still think a direct question like, what is resonance?
We've come to, we have had a few synonyms, right? There was one with the word vibrate.
Visceral.
What was the one with vibration in it or vibrating?
Yeah, the only trouble there is that when you...
Vibrant link.
Oh, that's all right, yeah, because
That's a good synonym.
when I used to talk to people about sort of similar stuff to resonance, vibrant link, yeah, they used to tell me I was talking a load of hippie nonsense.
Yeah,
So
but
we
it
have to
doesn't
be
matter.
careful.
It doesn't matter because now there is this book that gives you enough footnotes with a lot of data, and it's very scientific. So if
Must be
you
true.
want, yeah,
It must be resonant.
it must be resonant. No, what I mean, it's not bullshit. It's based on yeah, on something serious.
If somebody was to ask me, my husband probably when I go in to have my dinner in a minute, so what's the difference between resonance and happiness? What would you say?
Ooh. I know what Martin Seligman would say.
I would say resonance is a continuum all the time, and happiness is something fleeting, perhaps.
Yeah. There's
Do you
different
feel
types.
resonance all the time? Can you feel resonance all the time?
Well, I was thinking before when we were talking about, Antoine was talking about hugs, the free hugs business. That's a really nice thing. But say you're in a place and you're listening to some music or something, and you have a resonance of the music, and somebody gives you a big hug and destroys the resonance of the music, then that isn't, it's a different resonance, isn't it? So I'm wondering if resonance is always a kind of more neutral thing, or
The
I would have
example
thought happiness is a result of resonance.
Yeah.
or maybe
I think that's the
maintaining your
point that-
resonance.
Happiness is a state of mind through which comes through resonance, through your not just state of mind, but your whole being. It's really hard to describe it, but happiness is a feeling from a state of being.
Yeah.
And to me, resonance is like a state of being.
An attitude, maybe.
Yeah.
Because state is too static.
It's a connective attitude.
Yeah, exactly.
And happiness would be a result of connective attitude.
Excellent.
I think you should put down connective attitude, because I think that no one's used that word. You might be able to use that, because I think that's really important. We use it in clowning all the time. I do quite a lot of psychological clowning workshops since COVID, and connection has come up so much. It's such an important word.
Okay.
Like an openness, an ability to connect because you're open.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
the words are coming. Those words are used in the text we've just read. Openness,
Spreading a bit of joy.
And humanity is another thing we use in clowning, which to me resonates.
And
humanity,
happiness,
a connection with humanity.
Happiness has to do with the word happen, and which means that in a sense it's a lucky state. You have this idea as well in the French word bonheur, which means good time.
Idea. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Or happy hour, as we like to call it in England.
Yeah. Somehow. And
how about in the moment? Because that's another word we use in clowning. In the moment.
Yeah, and what you're saying, Susie, is very true. I think we could say happiness is what happens, the result, when you practice, and there's the word practice in the text we've read, when you practice resonance, or when you practice this connective attitude.
So wouldn't, because there was a whole thing, probably, of course there still is with some people, of mindfulness. Now, mindfulness is resonance, a part of a way to get resonance. So I think that, and that's not been mentioned, mindfulness, but all the actions of mindfulness have been discussed in these texts.
Yeah.
It's
So-
noticeable,
There is
isn't it?
some-
What- yeah, sorry.
No, go on.
The two examples given of Anna and Hannah, Anna seems to be more open and connected, but she also notices the potential for connection and joy potentially, whereas so it's the sort of being awake and alive to that opportunity.
Yeah.
Just one thing before I forget to tell you. Next week, as I told you, we will work on a text about an anthropologist who studies silence. And the task that we'll have will be to compare the conception of silence in the text that we've just read to the conception developed in that other text.
I'm pleased about that because I feel like the concept of silence in this text is misrepresented or misunderstands the potential power of silence. And particularly here it says, you know, there's no, the Christian tradition of silence is essentially sinful, but actually the tradition, well, the monastic tradition, the tradition of the Quakers, there's loads of examples of where Christian tradition has like promoted the seeking of solitude and silence in order to feel better connected and have greater understanding of the world.
Yeah, yet I think he was more specific than that. He said something about German culture, though. But I think you're right. You're generally very right.
Because I mean, in religion they have retreats, which is specifically for that.
Yeah,
don't
to
they?
practice silence. Yes.
And mindfulness a lot of the time is conducted on
Yeah.
your own in silence, isn't
Silence, yeah.
it? You can see it almost like as a reaction to the world, actually.
And it's a good
feeling.
point you're bringing that, because I wanted also to discuss the idea of self-resonance with this idea of music from our Walkman, which is, I think, the representation Rosa has in his mind when he thinks of silence. It's a silence not necessarily made of silence in a acoustic way, but silence as the silence of communication with the outside world, which would be better conceived as the destruction. I think silence here means destruction of communication with the external world.
Also, in clowning, silence is a really important state of connection with the audience. Because you face the audience in silence with your vulnerability. And
maybe
that's a deliberate way.
maybe disconnection is a better word than silence then, because silence to me does suggest an absence of sound, whereas disconnection just
we
means
should actually look at the original to see if that's the word he's using. It might be two words in German.
I've got to go now because my film is ready.
Everybody has. It was a wonderful session. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you
very
much.
nice to meet you all.
Really
Thank
good.
you, guys.
Good to
You're
see you,
good.
Roland.
Yeah, nice to
Have
see
an
you guys.
addition.
See you later. See you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you again.
Bye.